Hey crafters, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to make a pull tab card with an autumn theme. Hope you enjoy. So I started this card with a piece of paper from the Sweater Weather 12 by 12 inch paper pack from Lawn Fawn, and I cut it to 5 by 7 inches. And then I just tore along each of the 4 edges to give a nice, unique look to the front of my card. I just love the idea of using torn paper on a card, and I should definitely do this more often. So now I'm going to use some Distress Mica spray. This is the Holly Branch color. I'm going to shake it up so the mica's combined, and then spray it around all 4 edges. And I just love how you get that effect from using a spray, of kind of a splattered effect. Then I'm going to use a little bit of scrap paper and pick up the extra mica spray. And then I'll make sure both of these are completely dry before moving on to the next step. I'm just using a Ranger heat tool for this. Now on another piece of scrap paper, I'm going to use some Distress ink. This is the Vintage Photo, and I'm going to blend it over this piece. So these pieces are roughly 4 by 2 inches in size, the perfect size for the Lawn Fawn dies, which we'll use in a moment. So from the Build-A-Barrel apple set, I'm going to cut the barrel with the Vintage Photo and the highlight area of the barrel with that mica spray. And then I'll just glue the mica spray piece on top of the Vintage Photo piece. And I've got this beautiful barrel, perfect for the forefront of my card. Now while that's drying, I'm going to use another scrap of paper, which is big enough to cut those apples, and I'm going to use some Distress ink in Twisted Citron and just lightly blend the Twisted Citron over the paper. And then I'm going to die cut the apples on the Twisted Citron side and just cut the stem and leaf with white paper. So to make this a little bit more exciting, I'm going to use some Distress ink around the edges of my apples just to make them a bit brighter. So I'm going to use some of the Rustic Wilderness Distress ink and just blend it around the outside of the apples. And I'm using a finger dauber for this because it's really easy to control a little bit of ink, especially on small areas like this. Now you could make your apples any color for your card, but I thought that the green went well with the background that we made earlier. So now I'm just going to take the larger of the 2 apples and put it in my stamping platform and add a smiley face to it. There's lots of different Lawn Fawn sets that have faces in them. I'm going to use the one from Apple-solutely Awesome, and I'll use the stamp set again later on in the video. So I'll just stamp that with VersaFine Claire Nocturne, and then I can assemble the apple. Now to color in the stem and the leaf, I'm just going to use 2 different colors of Copics and just do some simple coloring. And then to stick the stem into the apple, I just use my pokey tool to make the hole a little bit bigger and then stick it right in. And then to secure it onto the apple, I use a little bit of double-sided sticky tape. But I won't remove the backing, just to make it secure. So to make this an interactive card, I'm going to use the mechanism from the Let's Toast pull tab set. So I'm going to tape down the 2 main pieces, the long slot and the top piece that goes on the top of the card. And then once I've die cut these, I should have a nice hole in the middle and then a groove at the top of the card where the pull tab mechanism will work from. Now you'll notice that I've cut the main mechanism piece twice, and that's because I like it to be extra sturdy. I'm using quite thick paper. It's 250 GSM. And I'm just going to make sure that it's extra strong by having the main part of the mechanism doubled over. So I've just glued two pieces together in the middle there. So then I'll just fold along the scored pieces on the mechanism, and then I can insert this into the gap on our card. Now the apple, which is going to go on this pull tab, is slightly smaller than the mechanism piece, but don't worry, that can be easily fixed. So the next thing I'm going to do is tape down the cuff which holds the mechanism in place, and the trick with this is to make sure it's not too snug, because if it's too snug, the mechanism will be very difficult to pull up and down. So now I'll just make sure that the top of the card is nice and neat, and then I can work on the apple. So as you can see here, the apple is slightly smaller. So this is an easy fix. If you just hold it on its side, you can easily trim off the extra pieces. And as long as you're not cutting the bottom of the mechanism, it will still work perfectly well. So I'll just trim this a little bit more so the apple fits on perfectly, and then I can glue him into place. So once this is glued on, and then I'm happy the mechanism is working, I can decorate the pull tab indicator so that the recipient knows it's an interactive card. And for this, I'll just use the same color of Rustic Wilderness Distress ink. Then I'll just fold the indicator in half, and I can glue that onto the pull tab part. Now I like to just double check that the mechanism is working at this stage before I can start adding on the barrel on top of the apple. So I like to pull it out and in a few times, making sure it works, and then I'm happy to move on. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're designing a pull tab card is that the object that goes on top, in this case the barrel, it needs to be quite simple. And I tried doing the same card, and instead of having an empty barrel, I had the barrel full of apples. But because it was more than one layer, the apple that was on the pull tab kept getting stuck. So I would recommend that the object on top is quite flat, and it's easy enough for the pull tab object to go underneath. So I put 2 layers of foam tape on this barrel, and as you can see, I just added it on the left and right hand side and left the bottom and the top of the barrel plain. And then once I was happy with that, I put it on top of the apple, so it's completely hidden until the recipient pulls the pull tab. So once I'm happy with my mechanism and my apple is moving smoothly, I'm going to flip this over and add some foam tape on either side of that mechanism piece. And then I'm going to put this whole panel onto a piece of black paper that is just smaller than 5 by 7 inches. And that way, when I add it onto my 5 by 7 inch card base, I will have a little bit of white around the edges. And I'll just make sure that the mechanism is still working. Perfect. Now, for the stamping of this card, I'm going to stamp the Apple-solutely Awesome as well as your, so that the sentiment says, "Your Apple-solutely Awesome." And I just stamped this with VersaFine Clair Nocturne on a piece of white paper, then cut it out and backed it onto black. And then I'm also going to stamp this sentiment that says, "I thank," and it is from the Superstar stamp set, I just want the word I for this, so I'm going to mask off the rest. Now you could, of course, skip this step, and I'll show you why I did it in a moment, but I just want the word I by itself. And then using Henry's ABCs, I'm going to die cut the letters that spell pick you. And I used black paper for this, as well as some gold paper that I had in my stash. Now the reason that I used I separately is because I ran out of gold paper, so I couldn't spell I pick you with the gold that I had in my stash. But of course you could do this if you're lucky enough to have a little bit more gold. So once I'm happy with the placement of these letters, I can secure them down with some glue. And I really like how if you put the gold on top of the black, it helps it to come alive and it looks a little more exciting than just having the gold or just the black by itself. So once all those pieces are glued down, I'm going to add some double-sided sticky tape to the back of this card, and then I can secure it to my card base. And as I mentioned before, the card base is 5 by 7 inches, so there'll be a little bit of white showing around this black. Now on the inside of this card, I'm going to stamp the word thanks from the same stamp set, and then glue down the extra little apple on the inside. So now you can see the finished card with the pull tab mechanism. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video inspiring. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. Have a crafty day!